Hello, friends. I'm continuing our conversation with luminaries, influencers, and trying to bridge the gap between philosophy and science, spirituality and science as usual. Today, I have a very special guest. His name is Alon Retter. Am I pronouncing your name correct, Alon? Alon?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, Alon Retter has a PhD in physics, specializing in astronomy from Tel Aviv University. He was a postdoctoral fellow and research associate in England, Australia, and the USA. Alon has published 63 articles, and his research has received worldwide recognition, including articles in the BBC, New York Times, and Science, and he has led a few international research projects. He worked in the Israeli Aerospace Industry in R&D positions and in startups, and served as the CEO of the Israeli Science and Consciousness Institute, and has registered 2 patents. His groundbreaking research combines physics and consciousness, including the development of a new gravitation theory that adds consciousness, the observer, to the equations to explain dark mass and energy. Dr. Retter developed the Astro-sociology model that suggests that the astronomical universe is a reflection of consciousness. Alon has a spiritual side with meditation retreats, courses in complementary medicine, spiritual teachers, etc. He also uses NLP and guided imagery and soul healing of the heart, holistic psychotherapy, and more. I met Alon recently in the Science of Consciousness conference in Arizona that's held by Stuart Hameroff and many others, but Stuart, along with David Chalmers and Sir Roger Penrose, have been big supporters of this conference, and I've been going to this for many years. So first of all, thank you for joining me, Alon.
Thank you very much for this invitation.
Where are you right now?
Right now, I'm in Israel, in a small city which is called Shoam, near the airport.
And everything safe over there at the moment where you are?
Yes, it is safe. Yeah.
Are you actively teaching right now in academia?
And no, at the moment I'm between jobs, and I really hope maybe this interview will help somehow. It has been difficult during the last 5 years since the corona. I have been working only part-time and relatively small salaries to what I'm used to.
Fascinating that some of the most important people in the science world are ignored at the cost of mundane concerns that we all have in our world, but that's how society is, I guess. Well, let's get to the heart of your philosophy and teaching. Let's just start with the quantum realm and the role of the observer and the measurement problem, as they call it. What is your view? Because right now, if I go to Wikipedia, there are at least 30 interpretations of quantum mechanics, and the Copenhagen interpretation is actually out of fashion, even though it was the most important one and came from the pioneers, including Max Planck and Schrödinger and all these amazing people, Niels Bohr. But it's out of fashion right now. I spoke to Caltech professor a while ago, Sean Carroll, and he's written a book called Something Deeply Hidden, where it seems he's a supporter of eternal inflation and supported by string theories, none of them testable. What's your view? What's your take on where we stand with the observer in quantum mechanics?
Well, I think it's very clear, and I'm not the first one who's saying it. Yes, I think that Nobel Prize, Nobel winning physicists have already said that once you check whether the electron or the photon is a particle, then you find out that it's a particle. However, if you check whether it's a wave, you found out that it's a wave. So what does it mean? It means that we must add the observer in order to explain what is the basic thing in nature. And the observer means consciousness, because the point of observation is one, and it is similar to the singularity at the first time of the Big Bang, and also at the center of black holes and white holes. Maybe we'll have time to talk also about white holes.
So, Alon, when I go to these days, with AI, you can search all the search engines, and I say, what is the observer in quantum physics? And the search engines say any classical system. It could be an instrument, it could be a sentient being, it could be just any classical instrument is the observer, which kind of is avoiding the consciousness issue altogether, because in the back of whatever instrument, there has to be a conscious being, even if it's an automated result that you get. But somebody at some point has to be at the back of this, or something has to be back, and you can't get behind consciousness. So you feel that what we call the observer is consciousness.
Yes, and I'm quite sure about it. And in astronomy, what happens is that we observe the past. When we observe the universe, we actually don't see for example, stars or galaxies at the same time. Then we observe them, but it's long time ago. Let's say thousands of years ago, or millions, or even more. So actually, when we observe the universe, we see a dead universe. The only point which is living is the observer. It's here now, the observer, and it's true for every observer. So it doesn't mean that there is an observer which is God or whatever. It means that each one of us is observing the universe from the singularity, from the point of unity, from the connection with something which is connected to all of us.
So then this is very interesting to me for two reasons. Let's say right now the James Webb telescope is there somewhere, and it's looking at the formation of stars and looking at nebula, looking at supernova, etc. And you say it's all the past, but as we observe that through the James telescope, and you also say it's a dead universe which we're observing, are we right now, through these sophisticated instruments, collapsing the wave possibilities in consciousness to observe the birth of the universe? Are we actually doing that right now when we look at these stars and galaxies through the James Webb telescope? In a way, are we collapsing the possibilities of consciousness? Is consciousness observing itself as that in the past?
Yes, I believe it is. I mean, I believe that there's nothing but consciousness. I mean, actually, consciousness is something that encloses the whole universe, all matter, all forms. It doesn't have a specific form, but it has all forms. It's not in time. It encloses, it encompasses all times, all space. So it's something above. I mean, in physics, usually we refer to X, Y, and Z for the space, and T for the time. I believe that we should have another dimension, which is S for singularity, which means that it has all times, all locations, all spaces, all forms, everything. This is consciousness. This is something that you experience, me experience, everyone else is experiencing. I mean, this is it. I mean, this is consciousness.
Okay, so now this leads to another very important question. I can understand that the James Webb or whatever we are observing is the past of the universe. But right now, as I'm observing you on my computer, okay, it takes a little time for light to travel,
Yeah.
from wherever you are in Israel and go through, bouncing off satellites, etc., to get to me. So am I observing you in the past? Is everything we observe in the past?
Yes, everything you observe in the past, obviously, when the distance is small, then it's the near past. Maybe, I don't know, a fraction of a second.
But it's
But
still the same principle. We are all basically ghosts in a collective dreamscape, because by the time I observe you, what I observe doesn't exist, even though it's a micro scale. The whole thing is a dreamscape past, and you and I are also observing each other in the past. It doesn't matter whether it's small or it's in, it goes into billions of years. The principle is the same. We only observe the past.
yes, and the only point that is matter is here and now. And this is the same for every observer. And actually, every observer, actually, he sees a movie. It's like the whole universe is a movie. And I can elaborate if you want.
I will. Let's go a little. You can elaborate, but before we go there, let me ask you. We spoke about the singularity at the Big Bang, and at the center of black holes. What exactly is a singularity? Okay, I would say, from what little I know, and I'm not a physicist, that singularity is space-time, energy, information, and matter all as potential, including time as potential. It's not a thing in itself. But now you are pointing to the Big Bang and the center of black holes. Are they realms of pure potentiality or creation?
Yes, I think it is. I mean, in physics, in mathematics, what happens when you divide a number by zero? This is infinity because you can't deal with it. In physics, there are two, perhaps three points when you refer to singularities: the Big Bang, the center of a black hole, and a white hole. And what happens is that we don't know what's there. Actually, there is the event horizon around the black hole, so you can't observe inside it. So we don't know what happens there. So maybe there's a point with an infinite mass inside, infinite density, or whatever, we don't know. I think it's very simple. I mean, it's like when you go with the numbers, you go for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you never reach infinity. Infinity means that you have to guess that there's something above matter. So the same thing is the singularity. Singularity means that there's something above matter, which you can call it consciousness, you can call it nature, you can call it God or whatever. But anyway, it's something that you can't grasp. You can't really understand. You have to experience it yourself.
So, right now, from what I've read and even spoken to people about it, only 5% of the universe is atomic. And from, I was told by Joel Primack, who's an astrophysicist, that not only 5% of the universe is atomic, but 99.99% of that is invisible interstellar dust, probably hydrogen and helium, created shortly after the Big Bang. So the visible universe, which is estimated to be 2 trillion galaxies, 706 trillion stars, uncountable trillions of planets, possibly 60 billion habitable planets just in the Milky Way galaxy, all that is 0.01% atomic universe. And as you pointed out, atoms and are made of particles that when they're not observed, they are non-local waves of possibility in a mathematical space, whatever, Hilbert space or whatever. So if that is the case, and 95% of the universe is dark energy and dark matter, then what are these entities? I've read, people say, oh, dark matter is some hypothetical thing called a WIMP, weakly active interacting massive particle. Dark energy is the opposite of gravity. But is it possible that dark energy and dark matter are actually the invisible sub-manifest order of being that is slowly emerging as the visible universe? In other words, is dark matter and dark energy a massive, these massive beings that are invisible that give birth to the visible universe, all these trillions of galaxies? What is your view?
My view is somewhat different. I mean, anyway, I'd like to first point out that there are two main possibilities, at least in the physical community. The first possibility, which most people believe in, is that we actually should find new particles that will explain dark matter and dark energy. And people have been looking for them during the past 40 or 50 years, but so far without any success. There's another theory which was developed by Israeli astrophysicist Mordechai Milgrom from the Weizmann Institute. And he suggested that we should change the physical forces at a certain distance. He doesn't know why, he doesn't know exactly how, and this model has problems, but at least several physicists believe that it may be correct. But anyway, this is a misunderstanding to my belief. I believe that there are no new particles. We can't find new particles that will explain dark matter or dark energy. In my model, what I'm doing is I'm adding the observer exactly as was done in quantum physics. So once I'm adding the observer is anywhere. So if I observe two masses, the observer observes one mass. From one mass, he observes the other and the opposite. But and this is how I receive the conventional gravitational force. And by the way, I believe that I'm the first in the world that understand why it behaves like 1 over r squared, because it's actually a reflection. An observer is a reflection of the other observer. And what happens is that when we observe the masses, the observer should add himself. Once you add himself, you add another force, which is a reflected force, which is caused by the light emanating from the observer and reflecting by the masses. So it's simple in one hand and it's complicated on the other hand. But anyway, I have a 3D model that explains dark matter and dark energy without any new particles. I still don't understand all details of the model, but I see now that it's much better than the two models I mentioned earlier. Because first we have a physical understanding, and second, we understand why the gravitational force is behaving like 1 over r squared. And I'm getting in the same model, I'm getting both dark matter and dark energy very, very easily. So I believe that this is the right model. However, it requires more work to finish it.
So when we speak of models, they're mostly derived from mathematics, right? And then observations. So aren't models also created in consciousness? How can models of reality are also created in consciousness, right? So all scientific activity is in consciousness. Theories are conceived in consciousness. Models are created in consciousness. Experiments are done in consciousness, and observations are made in consciousness. So whatever model you're talking about, it still requires consciousness.
Yes, of course. And actually, the evidence of the proof is not direct, it's indirect. Because actually you can't prove that there is something above forms because it is formless. So actually, there's something point to it, and the proof is indirect. This is the best you can do. I mean, it's not.
I have a very interesting question, which scientists usually refuse to address, and I'm curious about you. All we experience, ultimately, all we experience are sense perceptions, okay? Five senses and their extensions, whatever, ultraviolet, infrared, X-rays, cosmic rays, microwaves. These are extensions of our senses. So all we experience is sensations, sense perceptions, images in our mind, and also observe images through the sense. And we interpret them as thoughts and feelings. So if that's the only thing that we experience, is the rest of everything just a human construct? In other words, I once met an Israeli um, scientist, mathematician from, I forget his name, he was from Israel, but he was from the Soviet Union at that time. And we were in a meeting and we were discussing the nature of the universe. And he kind of very casually said, there's no universe, it's a human construct based on raw experiences of sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. What do you say to that? There's no universe, that everything we call dark matter, dark energy, gravity, those are modes of knowing and experience in consciousness. And then we create models or constructs. But in reality, the whole thing is an illusion. What do you say to that?
Well, I believe that he's correct, and the universe is an illusion. I guess, I mean, this is what I said earlier, that the universe is like a movie. So it's not really real. I mean, the only thing which is eternal is consciousness. And everything that changes is just the show. So it's not, in one sense, it's not really, it's like a dream, yes? It's like consciousness dreaming itself in order to be aware of it itself.
Okay, that's good to know that you agree with that. What is mass? There's a lot of misunderstanding amongst lay people anyway, that mass and weight are the same thing. What exactly is mass?
I believe, that the source of everything is light, light or love or whatever you can call it, whatever you want. So actually, the source is emitting light anywhere. And actually, this is not manifested. Only when there's a mass, then what happens is that we see the reflected light from the mass. So actually, a mass is like an obstacle that that causes us to see to be aware of it, of the source of the reflected light.
Would you say mass is also frozen light?
Yes, mass is actually frozen light or frozen consciousness. I mean, everything is consciousness, even the table, the chair, the computer, everything is consciousness.
Well, that's the heart of the teaching of Advaita, non-duality, as you know, and also certain aspects of Buddhism and Kashmir Shaivism. I once also met a very interesting neuroscientist and cosmologist in the Netherlands, and he's no longer with us. He passed away from leukemia, but I dedicated one of my books to him, which is called How to Know God. And he came up with the idea, this is 25 years ago when I met him. He said photons are not only the carriers of energy and information, they are the carriers of consciousness. So I would say that you agree, photons are the carriers of consciousness.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Yeah. What about space? What is space?
Well, space is like actually, the screen. I mean, in order to observe a movie, actually, what we need for a movie is we need a screen first. So a screen is the space and time. Then actually, in a movie, we need pixels in the screen, and this is the Planck scales. In addition, we need the beginning. I mean, you enter the cinema, you see a movie, there's the beginning, and this is the Big Bang. And then you need a story or pictures. And indeed, in the universe, you see pictures. You see stars, galaxies, supernovae, universe expanding. There's a story. Then you need a rate. And in movies, the typical rate is 24 frames per second. And in the universe, the rate is the velocity of light. And then you need an end to the movie. And one of the models for the end of the universe is the Big Crunch. And finally, which is to my view is the most important, you need the observer. Without the observer, there is no movie. And the same thing is in the universe. So actually, we have the observer observing the universe, and it's very similar to a movie. And all we need is, to just lay down in the couch and enjoy this wonderful movie. I mean, even if it has ups and downs, it's a marvelous and fantastic movie for each one of us.
In this movie, consciousness is experiencing itself as the birth of the universe and the evolution of the universe. Consciousness is knowing itself as that, right?
Yes, yes. I mean, I think that the whole idea of life is, to understand what happens here. Is to understand that we are consciousness. We're not just matter or mass. We are much more, and we are all connected. And actually, the term universe reflects it. Universe, uni for united, verse for colors. So what happens is there's a single source, and in order to be seen, it has many colors. And this is exactly how light is white. However, I mean, in the white light, you have all colors. When it's, in a rainbow, you see all colors. So this is exactly how the universe is made of, or this is how the show is going on.
It's beautiful, beautiful. So what about white holes? What are white holes?
Okay, so I think most people are familiar with black holes. And in black holes, what happens is that the gravitational force is so strong that actually light can't escape the surface of black holes. And years ago is now considered as a fact because there are many observational evidence for the galaxies, including our own galaxy, the Milky Way. So people believe that in the center of most, perhaps all galaxies, there are huge black holes of the sort of a few hundreds millions solar mass. So this is commonly known that there are black holes. Once the idea of white holes was raised, people reversed the equations and suggested that there should be white holes. So white holes, unlike black holes, what they do is that they emit matter. However, when people thought about it, they found that if you emit matter, then there is a large amount of matter, and then it has a gravitational force, and it should collapse probably within a fraction of a second. So there were a few papers with titles like the death of white holes. However, if you look at it from the Advaita point of view, or the non-duality point of view, if you have a black hole, then you must have a white hole. I mean, however, when you have a man, you have a woman. A woman is not the opposite of a man. So it's the complementary of men. So I thought about this idea, and then I realized that actually the Big Bang is a gigantic white hole. What happens in the Big Bang? That this is a window. It opens, it throws away a large amount of mass, and it closes. So it's only a fraction of a minute, or it's actually not in time. So I wrote a paper proposing that white holes are not exactly the opposites of white holes, of black holes. So actually, white holes are like mini big bangs. I think that the paper was called "The Revival of White Holes as Small Big Bangs" or something like that. And the idea is very simple: that there are white holes in the universe, and it's like a window. It is open, throw away material, and then it closes. And actually, if you do, sorry?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
And actually, when you do the equivalent to people, then you see that it's very clear. I mean, actually, when we are born, this is a white hole. When we die, it's a white hole. Each day, we get up to a white hole, and at the end, we go back to the singularity at night to the black hole. And actually, each point, each second, actually the second is rising and dying. I mean, it's like a mini white hole and a mini black hole. And by the way, there are many equivalents between people and the stars. I mean, this is a theory which I published. I had problems publishing it. This is a theory that the universe is a reflection of consciousness. The astronomical universe is a reflection of consciousness. I called it Astro-sociology, and I can elaborate if there's time.
I'm familiar with your idea of astrosociology, but before we go there, what are wormholes? You know, I've also heard the term wormholes that are like tunnels into other universes. Do you have anything to say about wormholes?
Yes, I mean, according to classical physics, or at least the researcher, what happens is that, I mean, we don't know what happened to black holes. I mean, what happened to the matter that is falling onto the black hole? And if there are white holes, where is the matter coming from? So there's an idea that behind each black hole, there is a white hole. So actually, they are connected. Once you connect between them, it means that matter which is falling into a black hole is emitting somewhere else in the universe from a white hole. So this is the idea, and people have played with it and suggested that you can, you know, transfer yourself from one point in the universe to the another point, which is distant, very distant. And this is, you know, science fiction. I mean, to my understanding, a white hole is not exactly the opposite of white hole or black hole. So actually, this can't happen. I believe that both black holes and white holes are actually symbols that mean to us that there is something above matter, which again, you can call the consciousness or whatever you want.
Okay, got it. You know, because we all saw the movie Interstellar, which was about, in a sense, wormholes, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. You talk about astrosociology, and I think you mentioned that the astronomical universe is a reflection of consciousness. And you raised the point that do stars behave like people? Are there stellar families? Do stars eat? Do they mate? Please expand a little bit on that.
Okay, so when we compare people and stars, we see lots of similarities. So first, you know, in people there is a person, a man or a woman, and in stars there are stars, obviously. And when we say stars, we mean suns. Okay, most stars are in binary systems. This is something that is known for over a century. And actually, my PhD was about novae, which is one type of binary systems. And some are singles, and we found out that some are in triples, etc. So it's very similar. When I checked, you know, I wrote this paper in 2010, And it took me 3 years to publish only a small version. And so when I found out that the distribution of multiples in stars and people is almost the same. So about 35% of people or stars are singles, about 50% are doubles or binaries, about 12% are triples, and then the number goes very fast to zero. So this is really strange. I mean, why should people and stars behave similarly? Also, there are hot stars and cold stars, like women and men. And also, there are children. Planets are like children. So a family is a binary system and a planet, or maybe or several planets. And actually, there are two types of planets. Solid planets like Earth and gas planets like Jupiter. And I can continue and continue. I wrote this paper and I published there, I think, about 50 predictions. I mean, it's not enough to, to see this similarity between people and stars, but as a scientist, I'd like to see resemblance in numbers. And by the way, I did simulations and found out that the similarity is 99.9% significant, which is really significant. And then I gave there many, many predictions. So about 14 years have passed, and many predictions have become true. And the predictions are very simple. You observe people, you see some behavior, and you predict that the same thing will be in stars. For example, I predicted that there should be orphan planets. And indeed, they found orphan planets. They call them free-floating planets. I also predicted that there should be adopted planets. So an adopted planet means that it is ejected from one solar system, and it is adopted by a second solar system. And indeed, there were papers suggesting that this phenomena is possible once they were trying to explain why in a stellar system, most planets, the inner planets, are revolving in one direction, and the outer planet is evolving in the other direction. So it was suggested that the outer planet was adopted from another solar system. There are also numerical predictions, for example, that the mean value of planets around stars should be around 2, which is similar to people. And this has been found, and many other predictions. So it's really amazing that, I mean, because typical scientists will ask, what is the connection between the humans or Earth and the whole universe? However, if you understand that everything is connected, then this connection is trivial. It's obvious.
That's amazing. And you also suggest that, like, and you just said, stellar families, do they eat? Do they mate? Do they have children? Do they get old? Do they get angry? I mean, it's like the microcosm and the macrocosm are entangled in one infinite being or consciousness.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I'm giving this talk, and I see, I show the simulations. I mean, there are people doing simulations of the encounters of stars. So actually, what they do, they took a binary system, and they took a third star, and he's approaching them, and there's some interaction. And I'm showing there that it's very similar to people. I mean, if the encounter is far away, nothing happens. But if it's very near, it can cause divorce and marriage. And actually, there's this sci-fi series, three-body problem. And actually, I took a movie from there. I mean, they prepare a movie explaining this behavior of three systems, and you can see there exactly what is similar to people. Yes, that encounters can cause a divorce and marriage. I mean, the third star will catch one of the two and may have an affair with it. It's really like people. And actually, stars eat. I mean, the professional term is an accretion disk. So stars eat through accretion disk, which is something that is known for over a century in physics. And there are many behaviors that are similar, many properties. Actually, it's not a complete comparison. Yes, I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's a reflection. So there are many things that are similar. And everything points out to us that there's something else above matter, which is consciousness. I mean, the universe tells us there's something above infinity. Yes, infinity is consciousness. I mean, it's the whole thing. It's the whole universe.
A while back, I had read about John Wheeler's proposal that of a single electron or a single particle universe. Do you have any comments on single particle universe?
Yes, I wrote once a paper and with the title "A Single Particle Universe." I couldn't publish it. I mean, it's sometimes scientists have hard times trying to publish a new physics or interesting ideas. The idea is very simple. I mean, if we observe a single particle universe, then we find out that there's nothing interesting. I mean, there's no physics. I mean, if the particle is here or there, it's the same universe. I mean, there's no difference. And since there's no difference, I mean, there's no meaning for time, for distances. There's nothing. There's no physics at all. No velocity. Nothing. Once you take two particles, or at least two particles, then there's a meaning. Because if the particles are close, then it's different than when they are distant. And if one of them is moving towards the other, then it has a velocity, or away from the other, then it has a velocity. So actually what happens in the universe is that everything is connected, and what's important is the connections between the particles. I mean, they can't be a one particle universe. I mean, we're all connected, everything is connected.
The one appears as many. The one appears as many.
Yes. Yes, I believe it's true. I mean, the consciousness doesn't have a form. In order to be shown, it has lots of forms or infinite forms. And each one of us is a beautiful form, and it has its present to give to the world. And we should enjoy it and enjoy life.
Alon, this has been a very interesting and wonderful conversation. What I will explore now is, once we have it published, this on the social media, I will explore the idea, if you like, of taking these ideas and using AI to animate these ideas for a short documentary. With your permission, we'll do it together. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I think it's a great idea. I think AI, it's an extension of human consciousness, and it improves it. And obviously, we can do things much better.